Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Houston Chronicle, this is Mission Control, Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle. How do you hear me?
Andrea, we have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. This first question is from Mark. I saw on Twitter that you had a pinched nerve recently. You know, personally, I get these from sleeping funny on Earth, so I'm curious. How does an astronaut get a pinched nerve in microgravity? Can you sleep funny?
You know, actually, I'm pretty confident it's not from sleeping funny. I can definitely relate to what you're talking about with long plane flight experience and things like that. But I am not certain what caused it. There's certainly lots of things we do that could cause it, but anything that I've done where I didn't really put some effort into bracing my spine before doing a max effort on something is potentially something that could have done it.
Okay. And this one's also from Mark. You know, I enjoyed watching the Space Olympics you guys shared. What was your favorite event, and how often do you get to relax and do kind of fun things like this?
Well, we get weekends off, and certainly the Olympics was a special occasion to try to have fun with that. My favorite event was one where the Dragon crew definitely beat my crew, the Soyuz crew. Again, I like to think of us as a one whole crew, but in this particular time, we needed to divide us up somehow. And they did an incredible version of our version in space of synchronized swimming. Yeah, I'm sure you got to see some of that video, but it was really well done. Ours didn't compare at all. Another really good moment was we were doing, again, our simulation of a gymnastics routine, solo events. And Pyotr Dubrov, one of our cosmonauts up here, he did an incredibly good job of just staying in one position and gyrating his arms and legs to assume a new position, stopping. And so he just understood the physics really well and worked it. It was really fun to watch.
Yes, I really enjoyed watching those videos. Megan, you recently shared some hurricane photos from above. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in Houston, so you know what it's like on the ground preparing for these storms. You know, what's it like seeing them from above? And, you know, how does that, what thoughts and fears and does that give you?
Well, Andrea, I, in fact, know about hurricanes pretty up close and personal. We lost our home in 2008 to Hurricane Ike, and so dealing with all of that aftermath is something that I remember quite clearly. We had the means to evacuate, so we were not there when our house was being flooded, but we also have some dear friends who lost their home to Harvey, and they were actually home when that event happened, which was, you know, very frightening and very dangerous and just overall very devastating. So, you know, having lived in Houston for so many years, we know what hurricanes are like. We know that you should try to get away from them if you can. And so I just, you know, seeing them from up here, you see this massive, the power of it, you know, it's eye-catching for one thing, and just wanting to share what that image looks like, you know, to help people understand the seriousness of what they can bring when they make landfall, so that hopefully people will take every precaution that they can, that they're able to, if they happen to be in the path of something like that.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I'm from Florida, so between living in Florida and Houston, you get a little bit, like, tired of hurricane preparedness. Does seeing it from above make it more real for you?
I think it's been pretty real for me, the experiences that I've had. I think what seeing the Earth and the Earth's atmosphere from above really drives home for us the fragility of Earth's atmosphere, that this very thin layer is, you know, when we see it, it looks like this very thin layer relative to the size of the Earth and relative to sort of the vast blackness of space. And so we see the atmosphere and we realize, you know, that that's what's keeping us safe on our own spaceship Earth. And so it's very important to do what we can to protect it. And, you know, the evidence of the increase in number of hurricanes, the intensity of hurricanes over the years is real evidence of climate change, and just hoping to share that message of this is something that, you know, that's real, that exists, that impacts human lives, and is something that we need to pay attention to and take action.
Okay, and this is another question for Megan. You know, I recently watched the video on how to wash your hair in space, which answered a ton of questions for me personally. But when you were combing your hair, it never appeared that you had any knots in your hair. So I'm curious, do you ever get knots when your hair is floating around in space, or does it not tend to tangle up?
I would say for me, it's about the same on Earth as in space. My hair doesn't get super tangled up, but absolutely when I comb my hair, big clumps of my hair will come out when I'm combing it here when I'm washing it, because on Earth your hair is kind of falling, little piece of your hair falling out all day long, and that doesn't happen as much. So when I comb my hair, I'll get big clumps of hair that come out. So I have to keep a piece of gray tape handy so I can stick that hair to the tape and make sure to throw it away so we don't get big clumps of Megan's hair floating around the space station.
Okay, and I know prior to your flight that Bob Behnken was giving you tips about flying on Dragon and living on the space station. So I'm curious what pieces of those advice helped and what you'd add to it for future astronauts preparing to spend a long-duration mission on the space station.
Absolutely. So, when we train at Johnson Space Center, and for me, also training at SpaceX in California, and we have really expert instructors for all aspects of spaceflight. So most of the technical knowledge comes from them, but of course, amongst astronauts, we share tips and tricks for living long duration in space. Mark, of course, had flown in space once before, so he knew pretty well what to expect. But it was nice for me to be able to talk to Bob after his 2-month mission, and he knows that I love food. I love to cook food, and I love to eat food, and so he really advised me, like, hey, you're going to want some different variety maybe than what's up there, and he's been able to pack some of my care packages with extra foods that he knows that I might like, some spicy foods and some salsas and that kind of thing. So that's been really helpful. So I actually did share that advice with other first-time long-duration flyers to really pay attention to what's called your crew-specific menu, so the things that you like best that they will fly for you. And also the other piece of advice I would give to first-time long-duration flyers is, you have all this technical training. They're going to get up here, they're going to know exactly what to do for all of the technical aspects, but it's the living in space part of it that's challenging. So the fact that you're floating and your stuff is floating all the time everywhere, it can take a couple of weeks to really feel like you've got the hang of it. And during those couple of weeks, you think, oh my gosh, this is actually much harder than I expected it would be. So I would just say, give yourself a little time, be patient with yourself. You're going to figure it out, and they're all going to be rock stars when they get up here.
What's the hardest part about getting used to, right? Like, when you're floating around, what's the most difficult thing that takes the longest, I guess, to adjust?
For me, I would say it's just that everything takes conscious effort. So you can imagine you put your keys on. Some of us lose our keys all the time, but ideally you put your keys down on the hook or the table, the place you always put them, and then you come back and they're there. Well, in space, if you're not really careful about making sure they're attached to something in that particular spot, when you turn your back on it and come back to get it, it won't be there. And there's so many things like that where the habits you formed on the ground over a lifetime just don't apply anymore. So you've got to put effort into forming habits. And then eventually, like Megan described, it becomes something that becomes second nature to you. You don't have to put constant effort into every single motion you make, because at first that's what it feels like. It just feels exhausting.
Okay, and so next week we have the Inspiration 4 mission launching. They're not going to the space station, but they're going to be experiencing microgravity and launch. And so, what words of wisdom, advice, or well wishes would you like to give them?
Well, we're very excited for them. That's coming up soon. My understanding is they actually have a viewing dome on their spacecraft, whereas we had a docking mechanism to come to the International Space Station. So I think their view of Earth is going to be tremendous. And my understanding is also that they're going to be up at a higher altitude, so their view is going to have a different perspective. So I hope they just enjoy that, every moment of that. It's going to be breathtaking. And I would also say, the memories are what you take away from your spaceflight, or the thing that you have forever, and that team camaraderie that you build in the shared unique experience. And so I would just say, look out for your crewmates. You guys will look out for each other. You'll enjoy the experience together, and it'll be something you treasure for the rest of your life.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate your time today on the space station.
Thanks. It was wonderful talking to you.
Station. This is Houston ACR. That concludes the Houston Chronicle portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from Reuters.
Station, this is Vanessa Johnston with Reuters. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Hi, Mark and Megan. Thank you so much for your time today. Mark, can you start by giving us a brief update on your current mission and what you're investigating?
So I'm a member of the crew of Expedition 65, and like every other crew member, we are like laboratory technicians. So we've got hundreds of experiments going on throughout the time we're on board, and we facilitate those experiments by making sure they have the resources they need, doing maintenance on the experiments, sometimes helping with video observations and photography. The funnest experiments for me are the ones we actually get to witness in action, and there's a technology demonstration. In fact, we could probably have Megan grab one of them right now. Astro Bee is a floating robot that operates based on fans, and we set this up, and we can watch it go ahead and operate while they're trying to learn how to make this be a useful device for future astronaut crews, maybe kind of like a sidekick floating around and helping you find things and things like that.
Very cool. Thank you. And this question is for both of you. Next week, civilians will participate in a SpaceX spaceflight, and a lot of people are excited about the prospect of being a space tourist one day. So what advice would you give to them?
Well, I think this is a very exciting time, Vanessa, with space opening up to more and more people. You know, we're both government employees, and we're proud to represent our government doing this. But of course, if we're going to be a spacefaring civilization, which I think we certainly all want us to be, then this is the next natural step, is to start seeing private citizens doing more of this kind of thing. So it is a very exciting time, and I would say, you know, that to those folks that are coming up soon, the Inspiration 4 team, just really wishing them well, and I think they're going to have a great view of the planet with the viewing dome that's going to be on their spacecraft, and they'll be a little bit higher altitude, is my understanding, and so I think their view is going to be pretty special, pretty spectacular. So I know that they'll probably be planning on sharing that with all of us through photographs and video. And then I would just say, you know, look out for each other. The crewmates that you're flying with are going to be your lifelong friends. They're kind of your new space family, and so, you know, take care of each other. It can be disconcerting when you're in space for the first time. You might not feel great, but just look out for each other and enjoy the shared unique experience.
And what could somebody who wants to embark on this, how can they prepare? You know, for example, should they take up scuba diving or practice their headstands? How should they prepare?
Gosh, I would say anything that you do that puts you out of your comfort zone, where you do things in challenging environments, and do things along with other people, because certainly spaceflight is a team event. All those things, stretching your horizons of experience, I think would all be very useful things for something that is stretching the horizons of human experience.
And Megan, I really liked your video showing how you wash your hair in space. What kinds of other everyday activities are surprisingly difficult to do up there?
Well, Vanessa, even eating your dinner can be a little bit of a challenge when you first get started. We rehydrate some of our food. Other food comes in kind of a shelf-stable packet that we heat up. And you know, once you open those packets, you do have to be pretty deliberate about, first of all, where you put them down, because if you don't actually attach them to tape or Velcro, of course, they'll float away. And then all of the liquid that's in those packets, you know, if you are eating too fast and you get some of that liquid airborne, it's going to go everywhere. It's going to get on your crewmates. You're going to find it a week later, you know, by the ductwork or something. And so every little thing that you take for granted on Earth, when all your stuff stays put, is a little bit more challenging in space. So you do learn, those things become second nature, but it does take a little bit of time to get used to.
And as the SpaceX civilian crew gears up for their orbital flight, I'm wondering if you could both share how you felt the first time you realized you had left Earth.
Wow, okay, so I can share how it felt the moment the main engine cutoff happened and I was actually in orbit. Most of us have experienced what it feels like to be on a roller coaster, and that moment when you're strapped down in the roller coaster and it kind of goes at high speed over the top of a bump and you rise up in the seat, that's what it felt like to me, but it went on for hours. And so I had this sensation that I was falling towards the ground, because in fact I really was. I was just going so fast that I kept missing the Earth, and we've been doing that for months now. So it was shocking to me. I had the sensation like I was pivoting forward too, which also, when I think about it, I was rotating once every 90 minutes around my own center of gravity. So that was part of being in orbit as well.
And for me, Vanessa, I think, when my first launch was aboard the shuttle, and as soon as you have main engine cut off, you have to get right to work transitioning your vehicle from an ascent vehicle to an orbiting vehicle. So there's a lot of work to be done. We're heads down in the books, reading through our procedures, flipping a lot of switches. And so I had a kind of a second where I was like, okay, yep, out the window, there's Earth. That's where it's supposed to be. That's good. I'm back to work. And so it wasn't until I really had time to unstrap and float around and look out the window and see the Earth environment, see lightning storms over the surface of the Earth, that I really had that feeling of I am away from my home planet. And it's a pretty remarkable, striking feeling that first time that you realize you're outside that protective cocoon that Earth provides to us. And it doesn't leave you really ever.
And can you just give me an idea of what your day-to-day is like?
Sure. We have a scheduled wake up at around 6 in the morning. We get a couple hours. For me, I like to do my exercise early, so hopefully it happens first thing in the morning. 7:30, we have time for hygiene and breakfast. 7:30 in the morning is a meeting. We work until around 7:15, which is our evening meeting, and then we get some time to clean up. Of course, I already mentioned we get a couple hours of exercise in that work period, and we have lunch. And otherwise, it's a huge variety of events, like this event we're experiencing right now, or just a little while ago I was transferring equipment from our Russian counterparts because they just finished an EVA, and we loaned them some equipment. We got an EVA coming up on Sunday, so we transferred that equipment back over. So there's equipment-related stuff. We're doing a lot of cargo operations. We've got Shane's in the adjacent compartment helping out with some science experiments. They're just constant and varied activity.
Exercise do you do?
So we do a variety of different exercises. We have cardiovascular exercise and we have some load-bearing exercise. So we have a cycle ergometer that's like a stationary bike, and we have a treadmill, and we have to wear a harness that kind of mimics a backpacking harness that then is chained to the surface of the treadmill with some bungees, so you can actually run and feel like you're running like you would on Earth. And those both give us cardiovascular as well as we get some load-bearing from the running. And then we have a advanced resistive exercise device which allows us to feel like we're lifting weights. And so we do all the variety of weightlifting that you might do at home, squats and bench press and curls and all of those things. And we do that. We get about 2 hours a day, 2.5 hours a day to do all of that activity. And that prevents us from losing muscle mass and bone mass during the time that we're up here away from the 1G environment that we grew up in.
Okay, and finally, I'll just ask you both, a lot of people are already reportedly paying good money to secure their spot on a future space travel mission. So is it worth the money?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Of course, it depends on how much money you have, and you have to make some value judgments about that. So compared to all other things, I'm very happy that I got to be up here, and I hope and expect that the people that spent the money to go to space will be very happy they did, and bring back some experiences that they can help share with the rest of us to better understand our existence on our wonderful planet.
And I think both Mark and I hope that our government believes that it was worth the money to send us up here. We work really hard every day to try to give that value back to the government and to all of the investigators around the world that have their research flying up here as we have research to advance, our mission to explore space, as well as research that benefits people back on Earth. So hopefully everybody's getting their money's worth.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Vanessa.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
And thank you to all the participants from the Houston Chronicle and Reuters station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.